Hi, Gary here again, and in this video I want to talk about over-instruction. Over-instruction is something that a lot of people get frightened about. Trainees tend to think that they can't instruct in certain situations because it will be classed as over-instruction. So I want to clarify what exactly is classed as over-instruction and how you can best avoid it. So we'll deal with the two different phases. First phase in a sense is quite difficult to over-instruct with because you do need a lot of instruction. But it is possible to over-instruct in a first phase. And the way that you might over-instruct is if you tell a pupil to do something that they've already done, for example. So if you say check your mirrors but they've already checked the mirrors, then that would be classed as over-instruction. So the best way to avoid that is to watch the pupil really carefully, and then you can decide whether you need to instruct them or not. So if you said take the next road on the left and you're looking at them when you say it and they do check the mirrors, you wouldn't need to say check your mirrors. Sometimes people use that as a kind of a way of confirming that they've done it by saying mirror check or something like that. They're not actually saying check your mirrors, but it sounds like an instruction. So rather than saying that, if you've seen a pupil do something correctly, give them feedback on it and say good mirror check. So that the pupil knows they've done it correctly, it confirms to you that you've seen it been done, rather than just saying mirrors, signal, position, and going through those key points as a routine, if you like, out loud. Because if you say that, it comes across as instruction to a pupil, even though you might not mean it as instruction. So avoid just talking about routine as the pupil's doing it, unless they need instruction. Watch it, see it, and then give praise if they've done it correctly. So the only way, as I say, on first phase it can over-instruct really is by telling the pupil to do something that they've actually already done. Now the next thing to think about is to prompt as well, when to prompt the pupil. So when you're guiding a pupil, you're guiding them to do it for the first few times and get used to doing it. When do you move on to prompted? Well, the best way to move on to prompted is to watch that they can actually do it at a guided level. If they can perform at a guided level and follow what you're asking them to do, then you can move it on to prompted. But don't think that after 5 minutes you've got to do prompted. It doesn't work like that. So if you've guided a bit and they're still struggling with it on a guided level, stick to guided. And that's not over-instruction, it's necessary. So guide it as long as they need it. If they're proving that they can do it at a guided level, then you can move it on to prompted. And pass the responsibility only when they're ready. So, as I said before, don't think that because you've got a time scale of like half an hour in which to teach it, don't break it down into like 10 minutes for guided or 10 minutes for prompted. Just think of it on the pupil's performance. So that's basically the first phase. So we'll move on to the second phase. So the second phase. Well, on the second phase, that's where people get a lot more concerned about giving over instruction. But it can lead sometimes to not giving enough instruction. So if we just clarify again what is over instruction on a second phase and how you can best avoid it by still giving instruction but not too much. It needs to be guided or prompted only when you've seen a fault. So try and avoid guided or prompted to begin with, because otherwise you'll be masking the fault. You might be telling the pupil to do something and they'll do it okay and they get through it, but you didn't really know whether they were going to be able to do it on their own or not, so you don't know whether there was going to be a fault there. So in a sense you're going to be waiting to see if the pupil can do it. But if you just sit there quietly and not say anything, a bit like in a mock test, then that's not enough instruction. So you need to strike a balance there. So the best way to do that is to ask questions and use proactive probing questions like second phase questions to find out what the pupil's seen and what they're going to do about it. If you were to point out a hazard to the pupil, again that would be over instruction. And quite often during the test, if the examiner hears you saying, let's say the subject is pedestrian crossings and you keep pointing out there's a crossing coming up, that's too helpful, that's over instruction. So the examiner might say while he's in roll, oh, will my examiner tell me that there's a crossing coming up? That's kind of a prompt to you to say, stop telling me there's a crossing coming up, ask me what I can see. So take on board those little hints that the examiner might be able to give you. If you hear them say something like, well, does my examiner tell me that? Or will they tell me to do that when I'm on my test? then they're trying to say you're over instructing now, just ease off a bit with that and ask questions rather than telling me what I should be doing and what I should be looking for. So be careful about not pointing out hazards to the pupil. Ask them questions about it, but use the second phase questioning technique, the more open questions. What hazards can you see? How is it going to be a problem? How are you going to deal with it? What are you going to do? Those kind of more open types of questions, but it will still give the examiner a chance to tell you in role what he's going to do wrong. So he might give you a wrong answer. He might say, oh, I'm going to do this or that or the other. And when you hear it, you'll think that's not quite right. He didn't say he was going to do something specific. Maybe he didn't say he was going to check his mirror, for example, and therefore he isn't going to do it. So if you hear something that's incorrect, then you can start to deal with it and work on it. And that might need instruction to fix it. And at that point, it wouldn't be over instruction because it's necessary to use some maybe guidance or prompter to get him to do it right. So the thing to remember is at the beginning, try not to help him too much. Ask a lot of questions. Find out what he's seeing and what he's going to do about it, but avoid pointing out the hazard to the pupil and avoid talking them through a situation until you know that that is where they need the help. If there's a fault with it, then by all means you might need to go back to that level of instruction. If you do need to do that, then it's important to transfer the responsibility back again quite quickly. So you might have had to go back to guidance to help with something. You might have gone through guided and prompted, but try to then transfer that back to independent quite soon after. And I think one of the best ways to do that, we talked a bit about how to decide to go from guided to prompted, see if they can physically do it at a guided level, then you can move it to prompted. But to transfer to independent where they're not needing to be told anything, the best way to do that is to say, give a bit of feedback and say to the pupil, okay, well I feel like you're getting a lot better with that now. Do you feel like you could do that on your own? Now by doing that, the examiner is able then to give you a bit of help, because if you say, do you feel like you can do that on your own, and he thinks or she thinks that you've not done enough, then that gives them a chance to say, well, I don't think I've quite got it yet, I think I need a little bit more help. Or usually if you've done your job correctly, they'll say, yeah, I think I can do that now, and that's telling you you can leave that, you can just watch it and that fault won't occur again. So it's a good way of transferring the responsibility completely by just saying to the pupil, do you feel, give the feedback, I feel like you've done well, do you feel like you can do that on your own now? And then usually that fault won't reoccur and you can move on to other faults that you've got to deal with. And finally, with over-instruction, another important thing to remember is to only give guidance or prompted with the element that you need to help the pupil with. So let's say, for example, you're dealing with junctions and you've got a problem with the speed and the gear. The mirrors and signal and position are okay, but the speed's too fast and they're not giving themselves enough time to change down into second gear. So with that, you would need to guide maybe with the speed and the gear, but it would be over instruction if you were to guide with everything from the beginning. And that's what a lot of people slip into a bit of a habit of doing, is when they see a fault with a certain element of MSPSL, they end up guiding with all of it. So if the mirrors and signal are okay, the position's okay, you don't need to guide with that, you don't need to prompt with it, just leave it and concentrate on the bit that needs development, the bit which was wrong with the speed or the gear. Just guide with that element of it, and then after you've done that, come off guidance again and leave it up to the pupil, because after the event they might be okay once they've turned in, they're checking their mirrors before speeding up, so that element of it wouldn't need guidance as well. So just be careful that you don't guide with too many different things, but you just help with the bit that needs the guidance. So hope that's helped, and look forward to seeing you next time.